Welcome to Spectro Tales. I am your host, Saif. You never heard story like this. Now begin the story. I had always hated the old house at the end of Raven Street. It was the kind of place people avoided, where kids dared each other to step onto the rotten porch but never made it past the front door. But when my uncle, whom I barely knew, passed away and left me the house in his will, I had no choice but to move in. At first, everything seemed normal. Dusty, creaky, but normal. The air smelled of old wood and something faintly metallic. The nights, however, were different. The first time I heard it, I was in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the eerie silence of the house. A whisper, soft, unintelligible, like a breath against my ear. I shot up in bed, heart pounding. My room was empty. The hallway outside was dark. Maybe I had imagined it, but then it happened again, closer. This time the voice was clearer, a raspy, low whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. My hands gripped the blankets, my body paralyzed with fear. I reached for the lamp, but before I could turn it on, my phone screen flickered and went black. Something moved in the hallway, a shadow, a shape too tall, too thin, and then silence. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Stress, lack of sleep. But as I walked through the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The whispers started again that night. This time, they didn't stop. I lay frozen in bed as the voice circled my room, whispering things I couldn't understand. The air grew colder, my breath turning to mist. And then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I reached for my phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight. The second the beam of light hit the doorway, the whispers stopped. But I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the reach of the light. Tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. And then, in the silence, it whispered one word: "Run." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing standing in the doorway, whispering in that dry, rattling voice. By morning, I had made up my mind. I was leaving. But as I threw my clothes into a bag, something stopped me. The door to the attic. It had been locked since I moved in. I had never even thought about it, but now something about it felt wrong. The whispers had come from that direction. The thing in the hallway had stood just below it. I needed to know what was up there. I searched the house for a key, but there was none. Frustrated, I grabbed a crowbar from the shed and forced the door open. A gust of freezing air rushed past me, carrying the scent of damp wood and something rotten. The attic was dark, filled with old furniture covered in sheets. But in the center of the room stood something that made my stomach twist. A chair, and on that chair, a bundle of old yellowed papers. I picked them up, my hands shaking as I read the first page. "If you are reading this, it's too late." My breath hitched. "The whispering man knows you're here." A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned, expecting to see an empty room. But I wasn't alone. I couldn't breathe. The attic was supposed to be empty. But standing in the farthest corner, just beyond the reach of light, was him, the whispering man. Tall, unnaturally thin. His skin stretched too tightly over his bones, and his hollow eyes glowed like dying embers. His mouth twitched, whispering words I couldn't understand. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. Then something worse happened. He smiled. Slowly, his long, bony fingers lifted, pointing toward the papers in my hands. My gaze dropped to them, and that's when I saw it. The ink wasn't ink. It was blood. And beneath the words, "The whispering man knows you're here," was a name. My name. The papers slipped from my hands as a cold breath touched the back of my neck. He was behind me. My heart stopped. I could feel his presence, heavy, suffocating. His breath rattled in my ear. And then, in that awful, broken voice, he whispered, "You let me in." The light in the attic flickered, the shadows twisted, and the whispering man laughed. I ran, bolted down the attic stairs, nearly tripping in my panic. The whispering man's laughter echoed behind me, dry and hollow, like dead leaves scraping against wood. I reached my room, slammed the door shut, and pressed my back against it, my chest heaving. But the whispers didn't stop. They were inside my head now, crawling through my mind like fingers scraping my skull. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and then something clicked. The papers. My name had been written in blood. But whose blood? I grabbed my phone and searched for any news about the house, and that's when I found it. A missing persons report. Matthew Graves, 27, disappeared without a trace. Last seen at his uncle's abandoned house. My blood turned to ice. That was me. The article was dated 3 months ago, but I had only moved in last week, right? A sudden rush of memories slammed into me. A door, a whisper, a hand reaching from the darkness. I had been here before, and I had never left. Something inside me shattered. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a flashlight and ran back to the attic. If the whispering man had taken me before, there had to be proof, and I found it. Beneath the old wooden chair, the floorboards were loose. I pried them open with trembling hands, and there, beneath the rotting wood, I saw bones, a skeleton, wearing my clothes. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The skeleton beneath the floor, it was me. My own rotting remains stared back at me. The tattered clothes, a perfect match to what I was wearing. My mind refused to accept it, but deep down, I already knew the truth. I was never alive, not anymore. A cold breath crawled down my neck. The whispering man stood behind me, waiting, watching with his hollow, burning eyes. "Now, you see," he whispered. Memory slammed into my skull like breaking glass. I remembered the night I arrived at this house, how I had heard the whisper, how I had opened the attic door, and how the whispering man had taken me. I was never supposed to leave. I was just like the others, trapped, forgotten, a ghost of myself. The room around me darkened, the walls stretched, twisted, closed in. My flashlight flickered, the batteries draining in an instant. The whispering man's whisper became a chorus, many voices all screaming my name. The attic was collapsing into endless darkness, swallowing the bones, the papers, the floor, swallowing me. I turned to run, but the whispering man was already there, smiling. "You were always mine." And then he reached out, and I remembered everything. I was the next whispering man. The darkness consumed me, and somewhere, far away, in another time, I heard a door creak open. A new voice whispered. Someone else had entered the house, and I welcomed them in. Thanks for watching. If you like it, then please subscribe and comment below for new one.